What's going on, everybody? My name is Ryan Snod. It rhymes with odd, and you're listening to and watching the Rhymes with Odd podcast. We're broadcasting to you guys from the Snod Media Group studios here in Polk City, Iowa, with another amazing guest. We got Rick Tollakson in the house. If you've been in central Iowa for more than about 10 minutes, you've probably seen Rick and his team's work. Rick has served as the CEO of Hubbell Realty Company for decades, steering one of the most influential firms in the Midwest through every economic storm probably imaginable, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Since joining Hubbell in 94, the company's grown to be very diversified with over 700 associates. You guys pretty much do anything real estate, I feel like.
For the most part, yes.
For the most part. Development, property management, residential housing, commercial, affordable housing, senior living, golf courses. I mean, we could probably keep going on, I'm sure. But later this month, which I think it's next week, right? You're going to be stepping down and retiring officially.
Yes, that's true.
So when this episode comes out, you will have already retired. So congrats in advance for that one. But we're going to talk a lot today about getting the whole company aligned with a vision, the lessons from your new book, Think Bigger, Lead Better, and the heavy weight of leaving a legacy behind and kind of the fun things that this catching you at a really fun time in your career. So Rick, thank you for coming on the show.
You're glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, we'll start with a big idea first, and then we'll kind of get to know you a little bit more. But you mentioned in your book, one of the biggest obstacles of a company's success is how they think. What's the biggest mindset shift that a business owner needs to make if they want to be successful?
Well, that your team can do it. I mean, it's I was one of those guys that pushed hard, led fast, and probably didn't focus enough on teamwork in the beginning. And you really, to be as successful as you want to be, your team's going to have to be right there with you, lockstep. Okay. And I talk a lot in my book about thinking bigger, and I'll have a story we can talk about, how that came to be. And I think that's one of the biggest things is really have a vision and constantly discuss your vision with your team over and over again, to the point where you're sick and tired of saying it because you've said it so many times. That's about the time that they're starting to get it. About the time, not quite.
Sure.
Okay. But that's about.
Sure. Well, I think that's a really profound thing, because a lot of companies, you talk to somebody who has a 9-to-5 or a normal corporate job, they might not know what the vision of their company is. And you feel like a lot of those folks probably lose interest or connectivity to that vision, where if you're constantly saying it, I feel like when you speak it into existence, that really kind of comes full circle.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, I think a good place to start, and we'll kind of go back in your early times, but if you met somebody on a plane or a chatty Uber driver and they ask you, who are you and what do you do? What do you typically tell those people?
I just tell them I'm involved in real estate, okay, and kind of see where the conversation goes. We have like 17 different operating divisions, so it's really difficult to kind of pin it down. So, we build houses, yes. We build commercial buildings. We build apartments. We do industrial buildings. We manage all of that. We do senior housing, and then again, as you pointed out, we have golf course, okay. We used to have 2, now we have 1, but we do all kinds of things. We're, very entrepreneurial in that way.
That's awesome. Well, I think the origin of the company, Hubbell's like over 100 years old, isn't it? Pretty close.
170 years this year.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So probably one of the first, I would say, larger companies in Des Moines, or at least an origin company that's been here for a legacy company for a while.
Yeah, and there's a few others. I mean, White's is probably right there with us or close to us. So there's a number of companies that have been around for a very long time in Des Moines.
That's awesome. I'd love to, and we'll talk all about the stuff you guys are up to now in your new book, obviously, but I think a great segue into that would be to learn a little bit about where you came from. So I'd love to hear your origin story. Where'd you grow up and what was your childhood like?
Well, I grew up in Iowa. Everything about me is Iowa. So, as I tell kids, my kids, when I grew up, I walked to school, clear across town every day. Now, I grew up in Palmer, Iowa. I think they had 150 people at the time.
Okay.
So you can imagine, I think all across town was maybe 3 or 4 blocks.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
But uphill both ways and 12 foot of snow, right?
That's right.
That's what I always hear when I talk to my folks that are a little older than me. They've always got these crazy stories about walking through the snow.
And then later in elementary years, my dad worked for the Rock Island Railroad, and later on he took a job in Hampton, Iowa. And that's where I went to finished elementary school, junior high, and high school. And, that's right south of Mason City. I always have to tell people 28 miles according to the sign. Mm-hmm. From there, I went to Iowa State University, got a degree in construction engineering. My first job out of college was with Youngblood Construction out of Washburn, Iowa.
Okay.
Which no one else has ever heard of that either, but it's basically a suburb of Waterloo. So it's part of the Cedar Falls, Waterloo Metro. I was there for about a year and a half and then went to work for a firm called Abel Howe Company out of Cedar Rapids. And then I was a project manager for them. That company doesn't exist anymore. The White's company purchased them several years ago. I was building the corn processing plant for Cargill down in Eddyville, Iowa. You know where Eddyville is. And from there, I decided I didn't want to do industrial anymore. I wanted to do something else. Hubbell was looking for somebody to manage the hub tower, kaleidoscope of the hub, 20-story office tower, 2-block-long retail center. And, this would be great. Something totally different from me than building big industrial complexes. And I signed with that. Really only planned on being here maybe 4 or 5 years, build the hub tower, kaleidoscope, get them leased up, and then go build a high-rise someplace else. Of course, it's almost 42 years ago that I've been here. So
that happens sometimes.
That didn't happen that way. Yeah.
Interesting. What do you feel like was a really good lesson or theme from your childhood that you took with you today?
Oh, basically I was taught just like a lot of Iowans are, you're taught it's all about hard work. Work hard, work hard, work hard. I told my kids the same thing and I think that's kind of the success that I've had is just, you just outwork your competition. It's tough morally. You got to look at it, because a lot of times you're working and they're all goofing off and having fun and, they're making the same amount of money you're making, and while you're burning the midnight oil, but it does pay back. It does pay back.
That's awesome. You mentioned you went for engineering right at Iowa State.
Yes.
How do you feel? And we've talked with a lot of people on this podcast about leadership traits and what types of people make the best leaders. Being kind of like an engineering person, like a detail person, do you feel like that you had to jump over some more hurdles to become a good leader or more established leader? Or do you feel like being in the weeds with the people and being an expert in the actual industry made you kind of a superpower for you?
Yeah, that would say that I was a typical engineer, and I probably definitely am not. Okay, so details are not my thing.
Okay, nice.
I'm not even particularly good at it.
Nice.
I did while I was working in Cedar Rapids, before they had the executive MBA programs kind of things, I drove, went 4 nights a week down to the University of Iowa campus and worked on my MBA. So what took me 6 years, I could easily have done in a year and a half in today's world. But back then, it didn't work that way. So I'm an engineer with an MBA. I find that, I probably gravitated more to the business side, but I understood the engineering side, so I can communicate with engineers. I was a professional engineer as well. So I knew all that stuff, but that really wasn't where my drive came from. That's not what I really enjoyed doing.
Sure. So you come in with Hubbell. This was probably in the 80s, right? When this all happened?
84 I started.
What was the industry or economic climate back then? Was Des Moines growing as quickly as it is now? Or what was the situation you were walking into at Hubbell?
Well, at Hubbell, they had the Hubbell family, the patriarch of the company, F.M. Hubbell, had set it up, and there was a trust that held all the assets downtown, and that trust ended in 1983, so 1 year before. And Hubbell Realty is probably when I started maybe 30, 40 people, okay? And, taking on a $100+ million 20-story office tower, 2-block long, was really out of the norm. That is not something a development company with, they've been around a long time. They hadn't developed for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of resurgence downtown. Locust Mall had happened. Marriott had happened. Capitol Square had just completed construction, and we were part of that downtown renaissance that was happening back then in the early 80s. Early 80s, tough time, high interest rates, as you wouldn't have recalled, but right. I'll tell you about it. It's pretty high. People think 6% is high today. We would have loved for 6%. We were done crazy for it. The Transit Mall hadn't happened yet, so when we were building it, skywalks were a big thing. The Kaleidoscope must have had, 6, 7 skywalks in it, kind of connected all the skywalk system in downtown. And that was pretty exciting. Downtown was the place to be. And for a guy coming from Cedar Rapids, didn't really have much of a downtown happening there. It was really something. And then in the middle of our build, that's when they decided to create the Walnut Street Transit Mall, which, as you know, has really been a complete failure. That did not work out right. But they gave it a try. It was big part of urban redevelopment happening at the time.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned that you'd worked for this company for, was it 42 years almost, roughly?
For Hubbell, yes.
For kind of a job market currently where people typically job hop every couple of years.
Yes, they do.
What's kept you at a company your entire career?
What is just the amazing opportunities that keep happening. I went after opportunities, and they never said, "Don't do it." We don't want to do this. We don't want to get into this. If I made a good case, put a business plan together, and said we ought to do this, we did that. And I've been allowed to grow the company. Okay. And, currently we probably have, 350, 400 associates with the company. Remember when I started, there was probably 30 or 40 associates with the company. Mm-hmm. Much different company today. Sure.
Well, and just having the, I guess the safe place to bring innovation. So many people, we again, talk with a lot of people on the show that internal employees typically don't bring a lot of that innovation because they're afraid if they raise their hand and say, "Hey, I got this idea," that if it's not received super passionately from leadership, that it's going to be a bad thing for them rather than like bringing ideas to the table. What was that kind of environment like for you as you were bringing new ideas and new business opportunities to the team?
Well, what you have to be able to do is, it's great to bring the idea. You got to make the idea happen. Okay. A lot of people like to throw the idea out there and think, "Hey, Ryan, it'd be great if you would implement this."
Sure.
Right. Don't forget to say, everybody, I came up with the idea. Yep. Now, if you're going to come up with the idea and you want it to happen, you better make it happen.
Sure.
And that's really the key to entrepreneurship. It's the ideas are great, but you gotta start making them happen.
Sure.
And you understand and it happens all the time, failure's part of the process. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we understand not every great idea is going to turn out to be a great idea. There's just too many variables that change what could happen.
Sure. What is one really good big idea that sticks out to you that your team has come up with, not just you specifically, but something that was brought up in the meeting or something that ended up turning into a really cool project or a cool approach to something that you wouldn't have thought of yourself?
Well, we decided after a lot of discussion that we would get into apartments. Now, this is in 2007, okay, that we went out and we bought a 1,700 units from a local developer.
Holy cow.
Okay. And before
You're
that,
not just dabbling in this.
We went after it. And that was, a pretty big idea for us. And since then, we've developed thousands of apartments, sold a bunch of them, developed even more. And it's a big core part of our business. Mm-hmm. But we just a frustration level we're having with our office portfolio, our flex office portfolio, our retail portfolio, and said, this it seems like all we're doing is beating our head against the wall. So we wanted something different. Mm-hmm. And so we went after multifamily, and it's been very good for us.
Well, I think again, and we'll talk about this too, is your community involvement. Like the more the town of Des Moines, the city of Des Moines grows, like more people move here. They all need somewhere to live. Yes. They need somewhere to work. Like you guys help facilitate those physical places for those things to happen, which again, if the town grows, you guys grow. It's like kind of a hand in glove situation.
And we're very involved in things like the Greater Des Moines Partnership, and in order to help this community grow. Mm-hmm.
No, I love that. We kind of talked about leading through some of these really hard situational or economic situation times. Like we talked about, the crash of 2008, COVID-19 pandemic, the interest rates of the 80s. Through all those things, what do you think is the CEO's role when the market really turns ugly and things are kind of crashing around you? What do you think your role or a role of a CEO is in a crisis situation like that?
We don't get rattled. Okay, you stay optimistic. You look for opportunities. Down markets are huge opportunities. Okay, yeah, you've got challenges, but the reality is you have challenges in up markets just like you do in down markets. So really, you stay the course, figure out what you want to do, look for opportunities because they're there. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot more of them in the down market than there is in the up market.
I love that. I know we had Adam Janizer on the show. He's the CEO of Power Life Yoga, if you're familiar. They have a couple locations here. They're in other metro markets now. Similar thing. He's like, I think it was during COVID, he's like, well, I guess we're going to go and buy a couple $1 million worth of, or lease a bunch of, sign up for a 10-year lease on 3 or 4 new locations. Yes. And spend a couple $100,000 on each one just to get it. Cause it's like when people are running scared, you got to kind of run in with your flag bearer and go, we can do this.
You take advantage of it. You definitely take advantage of it.
That's great. I love that. We also talked about the diversification, which I think is a really interesting topic for someone listening. If they're like a small business owner, you guys are obviously a much larger organization than a small business, and you can kind of touch on those things. But when you guys are looking at like land, commercial, industrial management, all the different services, how do you decide when to go into a new sector versus like doubling down on one that's really working well for you?
Well, the reality is we do both, okay? And so it's really up to the managers in those particular areas to, if you're in charge of development, you're looking for development opportunities and say, hey, multifamily is great, but what part of multifamily? Is it a big project? Yeah, big projects are fun. They also, you have to raise a lot of money to do them.
They're expensive.
Small pot projects take a lot of work, but you can get them in and out of them very quickly. Okay, so you just look like, where's the opportunities? What's happening out in that marketplace that we can take advantage of? Okay, and if something is really working, we continue with it. But at the same time, you got to be looking, okay, this may not continue forever. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what else are we looking for? Mm-hmm. Okay, and where's that going to be? I
love it. With real estate being kind of I would say like a traditional legacy industry, how have you guys like adapted to change or innovation? Because you talk to somebody that's been in the industry for a while, it's probably pretty similar to what it was years ago. Maybe there's some technology, but what has it been in your experience for kind of adopting new technology, innovation, and like accepting innovation into an older or more legacy industry?
I can see it the most in the multifamily sector. What was predominantly the kind of apartment buildings that were being built and amenities, which basically didn't really exist in the 80s when a lot of apartments were being built, and to now, everything has a clubhouse. I remember we did a dog park and how unique that was. Right. Nobody did dog parks and pickleball courts, and all those things, that are amenities. And you look at the finishes inside. Somebody's commenting the other day, it was a laminate countertop was standard. Now a quartz countertop is standard. Okay. Why is that? If you're living in an apartment, do you need a quartz countertop? No, but that's what the market wants. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you build to the market. Now, affordable housing side, hey, you go to less expensive things, mm-hmm. and you got to figure that out. Okay. So you got to react to every part of the market.
Sure. Well, and kind of just creating this, like, I would say cradle to grave process here where you've got like affordable housing for young families or individual people with their friends. You've got your first time home buyer situation. Yeah. You've got, bigger homes, but also like, again, the retirement homes, the things for every aspect of someone's life cycle, you've got a place they can stay.
Yes. And we worked and tried to look at those opportunities. Two of the latest opportunities, for example, we started an on your lot division called Origin Homes. Okay. And so they're going around, their goal is to build in every county in Iowa. And I think Claire could probably tell me, 31. So
the 3 and the 1 somewhere.
Somewhere. I'm looking at hand signals over here. Somebody trying to tell me what's going on.
I like it.
Okay. And and combined with that, we started taking advantage of workforce housing tax credits. Okay. And to build in small towns, like Gowrie, Manning, Knoxville. We're in Conrad, Jefferson. And I won't know them all. Okay.
Sure.
Someone else runs it, but it's been a very, very successful division, and they keep going. And we build spec homes with the housing tax credits. And once we're in a community, we build. It's very surprising the price point of built to order houses that are going out in rural Iowa.
Sure.
Okay. It's a lot higher than what people think. Yep. Much higher than what people think. And so we have a division for that. We have a custom home building division because our Hubbell Homes division, is really a production home builder. And they're building the starter homes on up to a certain price point. But if you really want to customize your home, Hubbell Homes really isn't your builder. You need to go to a custom home builder. And we have a division that, called Embark Signature Homes. And that's what they do.
That's great. Yeah, I'm sure. If we had the tax folks on, this would be a lot. They're like, how complicated, interwoven, and everything. But it really is. It's a service line for every single offering there.
You're looking for those markets. Same thing as when we got into townhomes, and you look at the townhomes go from entry-level townhomes, senior living town. We have 55 plus communities, okay, where they're doing, detached townhomes along with duplexes, going after the active adult 55 plus. We have, affordable housing units that are just for 55 plus senior housing. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you got to be able to jump in and out of all those markets. Okay. Trying to see, where it is, because competition's fierce. Mm-hmm. Whatever market I'm in, there is somebody else that will be in that same market segment, in another month or two. Mm-hmm. Okay. If I have any success doing anything, somebody else will be in that market segment within a few months.
That's awesome. You mentioned all the different market segments, the different managers that run those departments. How do you guys make sure that everyone is interconnected and communicating often and well enough so then the ideas from the top filter down quickly and efficiently, and there's communication going both ways? It's not more of like a hierarchical top-down approach.
Well, that takes a lot of meetings. And unfortunately, it takes a lot of meetings. Okay. And communication, you would think with all the tools we have today that communication should not be an issue. But if you were to survey our team today, it would, the same answers would be like, if we surveyed a team back when I started, lack of communication. Well, if you remember when I started, your phone calls were taken by a secretary. There was no voicemail, okay? And there was a little pink slip, and she wrote down who called and a phone number, with a little bit of message and how you were supposed to respond. If you mess up something you wanted to route around, there was no email, so they had a slip that you stapled or clipped onto a document, and you initialed it as it went across your desk. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was a communication. We have all these tools today, and communication is still the number one concern with associates. They don't feel they're being communicated enough.
Sure, no, I totally get it. It's hard with a bigger company. That's the fact of it until. So we can figure out telepathy if there's an implant that goes in your brain and can tell you what your thoughts are.
Well, part of it is I can communicate with you doesn't mean I can make you listen or understand or really give it some thought. Sure. And that's kind of the other side of it.
Sure. Well, and I wanted to ask as well, how do you guys help facilitate innovation within the company and have kind of like guardrails on giving people opportunities to bring new ideas or if they give them an invitation to come up with things that could be the next big thing for Hubbell?
Once again, if you got an idea and you want to push it, you got to push for it, okay? And you got to sell it. And, it can get a little tough because people are trying to see, are you really committed to the idea? You want to make it, because usually your idea involves taking resources, money, and putting in people and time and putting it behind that idea. Mm-hmm. So you better explain what the upside potential is. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's what you sell everybody on. And sure. The fact that you're going to be the lead and you're going to help make it happen.
Sure. Well, I think the ownership side, if you're given an idea, you have to quarterback it. That's like kind of the ultimate thing is like, it better be a good one because you're going to have to put a lot of your own effort, skin in the game, so to speak, like your own thought and your own resource to get it out over the finish line. So that's great. I know earlier on we had talked about, and we'll talk about this in a second, but you wrote a book recently.
I did, yes.
Congrats. Now you're a published author.
Yes. Of a bestseller. Yes.
Hey, there you go. This is great. We'll have to put a link that you guys can check it out in the description. What was the first thought about writing a book? Was that something on your bucket list, or did enough people tell you should write a book that you're like, all right, fine, I'll do it?
My team wanted me to write the book. I think they wanted to keep me occupied so we can continue the transition, with the new CEO.
Sure.
So, but as I said, I kind of go back to the beginning. So 42 years ago, a little bit about that same time, I was 50 years old. Okay, 22 years ago, 50 years old. I told Jim Hubbell I was going to retire at 55. If you're a baby boomer, your goal in life was to retire at 55. Now, as I tell people, I'm 72 years old and retiring. That was one of my goals I totally blew.
Right.
Okay. But I went to Jim Hubbell and said, this is my goal. I really enjoy what I do. We had a lot of fun. I set myself up. I've got it handled. I can retire at 55. And he looked at me and says, well, Rick, we got a problem because I'm going to retire at 55 and you're not. I said, what are you going to do? I mean, your name's Jim Hubbell. Your name's on the company. He says, I've been doing this a long time. I don't want to do it anymore. Okay. And you're my succession plan, even though we didn't really talk about that.
And you guys are just pointing at each other like, but I thought I was going to go.
So I said, okay. And I said I would take over the company. So in 2004, I took over the company as CEO and started running with it. Okay. But the next question he said to me, he says, okay, Rick, you got to come up with what your vision for the company is. Okay. And I tell people, I'd be sitting down across from you saying, okay, Ryan, if I told you today you're going to run the company, and I said, next, I want you to tell me what your vision for that company is. What would you come up with? Okay. And it's not like you're going to get a year to do this. You got to, next week when we have lunch or breakfast, you're going to tell me what your vision is for the company. So I sat down and I went through all the things that I thought made our company great and the things that I thought we didn't do well or I didn't do well that we needed to improve upon to make our company great. So I came up with what I call 8 to Great. And that's my cultural vision for the company. And I'll go through them real quickly. Sure. Okay, so I totally won't lose you.
No,
Number one, it was the associates in our company and their passion to do and be their best. You got to have people that are self-motivated and have their own drive. Because if you're going to rely on me to motivate you constantly, you are really going to be disappointed. Okay, that really isn't one of my strengths. So you got to have this passion that you want to excel. Okay, that doesn't mean you have this passion that you want to run the company, but you got to excel at what you want to do. What is your passion inside? Number 2 is entrepreneurialism. Okay, and as that entrepreneurial spirit and attitude, I've been able to start lots of different opportunities within our company, and I believe for our long-term success, we had to keep doing that. And we have been able to keep doing it. And it just isn't one person's job. It's not the CEO's job to always come up with that. It's the team's job to come up with what those opportunities are. Number 3, back to engineering. I call it an engineering mindset of process improvement. As engineers, we kind of think everybody thinks like we do. And then you realize most people have their eyes glaze over when you start talking about processes and process improvement. And, but I knew for us to be a good company that processes during growth is going to be the key. You have to define your processes and you have to work on them constantly. I know if there is a problem within our company, first thing I say, let's go back and talk about the process and how you didn't follow it. Or you followed it and it didn't work, so we didn't have it written down right. So understanding processes and process improvements. Our number 4 is basically our mission statement, and that is to enrich the quality of life in our communities by being a leading provider of real estate solutions. And we do that, for clients and, communities and associates and everybody. So that's number 4. It's really longer than that. Next is accuracy and speed. Goes a little bit with process improvement, quality control. Okay, you got to do it. You got to do a job right. In construction, we call it measure twice, cut once. Mm-hmm. But you got to provide. You got to do it right. Okay, and then people expect you, want you to know how to do it fast, not the other way around. Mm-hmm. Accuracy and speed. If you do that, you have what we call Hubbell raving fans. Okay, those are the people, both internal and external, that say great things about you, and we have a huge amount of Hubbell raving fans. Yeah, we have a few that they're never going to be raving fans, no matter who does business with them. I get that. Okay, I might even lean that way a little bit myself, but Hubbell raving fans is key to us, and we do a really good job with that. And then teamwork. Now, I was an individual sport guy, as a wrestler, track guy kind of thing. Teamwork was not something I grew up around. I sucked at football, so I really wasn't, hey, go team. It was kind of like, yeah, my relay team, does that count? Or the wrestling team, but it was all individuals. So, you have to change your thinking. I knew for us to really be good, the team was going to have to be good, right. And teamwork was going to be key. And number 8 of the 8 to Great is the one that they all remember. Okay, if I was to ask any associate today to tell me 8 to Great, they might mumble a few of the other ones, but number 8 they get right because it's to have fun. Because you got to have fun at what you're doing. Okay, if you aren't enjoying what you're doing, you're doing yourself a disservice doing it. Okay, go work for somebody else. Try something different. If you're within our company and this isn't the role you want, go talk to somebody about some other role within the company. There are plenty of opportunities within our company, but maybe it's not a good fit for you. Maybe you need to do something else. That's okay too. Mm-hmm. But you got to be having fun.
Sure. I love that. Thanks for breaking those down. When you're looking at all the different stuff in the book, I'm sure there's a lot of things in there that would be helpful. Which chapter do you feel like a entrepreneurs or business owners that are like 25 to 35 should like definitely mark and star. Like I need to go back and read that one 2 or 3 times to make sure it really sticks.
Well, I'm going to tell you the story of Think Bigger. Okay. In 2006, we did the Extreme Makeover with Ty Pennington.
Nice.
Okay. You might remember it. Reruns. You're
Oh, yeah.
pretty
Oh,
young.
I used to watch it. I used to watch it. Bus driver, move that bus.
Yes.
My wife is really big into home improvement, and all of her tools are pink, and she wants to be like Paige, whatever her last name was, because her name's also Paige too. So it's funny.
Oh yeah, Paige was hot. I'll tell you that.
And she was, and she was getting girls interested in construction. She was doing the dirty work.
She's one of you never really worked with Ty Pennington, but you did work with Paige and the other people. They were actual designer construction people, and they did all the projects. Ty just kind of showed up for the move the bus scene and stuff like that. We did that. It was rewarding, but it was not in our marketplace. It was rural outside of Lincoln, Iowa, which I tell people, by the way, it's right outside of Gladbrook, by the way, which is outside of Marshalltown. Okay. And so people begin to get it. But media market with Cedar Rapids really wasn't Des Moines, and we're not in Cedar Rapids. So, if we had the opportunity to do something in Des Moines, Iowa, I really wanted this opportunity. In 2007, I met with a woman named Sister Stella Neal. She was the CEO of a group called Iowans. And she was with a woman named Lori Miles, and they called on me. And I'd been this is in 2007. I'd been the CEO now for 3 years. You get asked for money all the time, and they had a capital campaign they're looking for money on, and I didn't know either one of these people. I never heard of Iowans. So Iowans is an organization that provide housings for the poorest of our poor families in our community. Seems like a good cause. And the more, they had some lots, they had the ability. I said, tell you what, instead of just giving you money, how about if we build you a house? I thought that was a pretty generous offer. Okay, well, but, we did the extreme build, in this farmstead outside of Lincoln, Iowa. How about if we build you a house? And this Sister Stella looked at me and said, well, Rick, that's a very generous offer, but can you think any bigger? I was a little taken back. And as I tell people, I'm a little Lutheran boy from Hampton, Iowa. I mean, I'd never even seen a nun before, let alone talk to a nun. And she didn't look like any nun I've seen on TV. Yeah. I'm like, well, what is going on here? And I said, tell you what, you said you had some duplex lots. We'll build you a duplex. We'll build you 2 houses. 2 houses. And she says, well, Rick, that's a very generous offer, but, I was wondering if could you think any bigger? and now you're kind of getting a little upset, okay? Back then, if I would have said, hey, I'll give you $2,500, $5,000, something like that, she would have thanked me and she would have been on her way. End of conversation. But here I am just offered to do 2 houses for her, and she's wanting to know if I can think any bigger. So I said to her, just how big do you think I need to think? She says, well, our project here is a 9-plex. I said, you want me to build you 9 homes? Rick, no, you've been very generous. All I want to know is how big you can think. You want to know how big I can think. Like, you don't think I can think big at all? No, your offer is very generous. So I said, you know what? You're on. We'll build you 9 homes. This is in 2007. We were having a fantastic year. You talked a little bit about 2008. That was not a good year.
Sure.
Okay.
They're coming to you like, what did you agree to with this nun about 9 homes?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But in every downturn market, there are opportunities, and that was also about the time Obama came in, gave a lot of those first-time home buyer tax credit programs. And so if you were still in business, okay, and a lot of my competition was not, but if you're still in business, there were plenty of opportunities. And so we had a ton of work going on. And by 2009, when the land that Iowans needed to build this project actually got acquired from Polk County, we built, in the fall of 2009, we built 9 homes for 9 families in 9 days, actually 7.5 days. And that was our first extreme build.
How do you even do that? Like, how do you get a home built in like a day or 2? It's incredible.
You mark, once again, that process, you have your process totally detailed out. Your suppliers and subcontractors are extremely generous. They help with everything, okay? And they just, you have it probably in either 10 or 15-minute increments. We have the whole schedule for that, in this case, 9 days on that particular project, all mapped out.
Sure. I was going to say the hard thing would just be like concrete curing, because some of those things you just can't speed,
Okay, so we do cheat a little bit. I get,
You pre-cure the concrete
Some
blocks.
of my engineering friends, everybody was saying, whoa. Aren't you cheating? How am I cheating? We've already got the foundation in. Uh-huh. Nice of you to notice. Nobody else here could give a rip about that foundation being in. Sure. It looks like a flat piece of ground.
Yep.
So stop worrying about what I got done that was all weather related. From that point on, I was building straight up.
Sure.
But we went on from there. We went to Easter Seals Camp Sunnyside 4 years later. We did cabins for campers, built 2 7,500 square foot lodges. We went from there. We went to Ronald McDonald House downtown, tore down the Ronald McDonald House, built a 20-some thousand, 3 or 4 story, I think a 3-story building with an elevator. We did that in a week for Ronald McDonald House. We then went back to Easter Seals Camp Sunnyside, 4 years later, did a child development center. And then I got a call from, Stephen Ort with, we used to be with Polk County Supervisors.
Yeah.
Okay. He's a friend. He was on the, On With Life.
Yep.
And
we've seen the house out there. We're doing some more videos out there for recruiting series. They're really nice out there. So.
Yeah. So he had this project, and I think, I'm pretty much at the done. We're at the end of my career. Like, I don't think so. And I said, but I'll go meet with On With Life. I lived in Ankeny for 20 years. You'd think by then I would have maybe, but I had no reason to go out there. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I went out there, toured. It's an amazing facility. And as you said, you're out there, so you know what it is. And, they were just looking for us to maybe do one of those houses. And I said, if we're going to do one, we'll do 2. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we built those 2 houses. Don't remember the name of the Homes for Hope, I think it was called. Yep. Okay. And we're in the process of identifying our next extreme build. So that is a thinking bigger concept that we just carry on. It's a team building exercise more than anything else, not just with your own team, but with your suppliers and your subcontractors, everybody you work with on a regular basis. They all get heavily involved in this. It's 1 week every 4 years. Okay. So, it's a big deal. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing the impact you have on the community. And that's part of our culture as well. And that's the impetus, and that's the story, the preface story before chapters, because, Forbes, is who we used to help with the book, said, we want chapter 1 to be your first principle. So there's 8 chapters. So we have prefaces before the book start.
Right.
Okay. Read the preface about thinking bigger. And I think that's really what, most people need to challenge that. That was what I was challenged on the most. And whenever I start thinking about something, I think, are you thinking big enough? I never believe I think big enough.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I love that concept. I know there's a really popular one going around right now. It's 10X is Better Than 2X by Dan Sullivan. Really popular book right now. Similar thing. It's like people just focus on like, oh, I'd be great to like double my business next year. It's like, well, what could you do to 10X it? And it's like you start thinking super big, and it's like, the things to get a 10X change are a lot different than a 2X change. You have to systematic overload of like what can happen or who do I have to be as a leader and all those things. So that's great. As you were kind of preparing the book, how hard was it for you to distill 40 years worth of career knowledge into like a couple hundred pages? That had to be really hard.
Once again, all those stories I just told you, I have told them hundreds and hundreds of times. Okay. To all of our associates over and over and over again. And it's those stories that they wanted me to talk about in more detail in the book. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's what I did, because, every one of those extreme builds has a whole story behind it. Okay. Every one of those principles as a whole raft of stories associated with it, and what it means to different people, and what we've done in our company to strengthen those kind of things.
I love that. We'll take a break from this and we'll jump into our lightning round. So now you'll have your in-between spot here. So you feeling good?
Sure.
Feeling nervous? No? Okay.
Not nervous.
No, it should be good. Okay. Let's see here. What is your favorite building in Des Moines that isn't a Hubbell project?
Oh, Favorite building in this, not one of our projects.
Maybe like architecturally or just the design or like the look and feel of it.
Just from the outside, I really enjoyed the Hubbell's life insurance company, which I was not part of at all, was in the Aqua of Iowa building. I think that's a pretty iconic building downtown. It's pretty cool. But, the temple, I was part of the group that, we helped fund it with Harry Bookie to keep it around. I think that's one of my favorite buildings that we kept around. The Hotel Fort Des Moines, which, when you work downtown and, we are on 9th Street, they're on 10th Street. So that's where we went every, Friday night and many times often nights during the week. Okay. And to see what they've done with the Patels have done with that project is amazing as well. There's a lot of cool buildings downtown.
I love that. Yeah. We've done a couple of videos with Des Moines Heritage Trust and kind of seeing the revitalization, if I can get that word out, of older buildings. And it's so cool. Like being a history buff myself, I'm like seeing people give old things new life. That's really sweet to see. Let's see. In one word, could you describe the Iowa business community?
Giving.
Okay.
They're very giving. They're very open. Okay. It's not hard to talk to, anybody. I get, different people that just call up and say, hey, can I meet with you? But the only thing I do is give them to my assistant to schedule a time because I don't handle my own calendar. But, it's easy to talk to people.
Sure. It's a big little city, right? It's helpful to do that. What's the first thing you're doing on your first day of retirement?
Nothing.
You're just sleeping in.
Yeah.
I like it.
I've got so many trips planned this year. It's unreal. When this thing is running, okay, I bought a new sports car and I'm doing Route 66,
nice.
Pacific Coast Highway 1, and then come back again from Seattle, okay, for 5 weeks, just driving my car and checking out all those sites. But before then, we're joining Des Moines Performing Arts. They go to Broadway shows in New York one year, and then they go to the West End in London. So I'm going to London with them, and going down to Mallorca for a couple weeks. 1 week just, at a resort, and another week doing a back roads. If you've ever heard of back roads, it's a kind of like Trek bikes. They have it's a similar thing. I'm going on a 1 week long bike around Mallorca Island.
I love that.
But I've got, trips to France and Italy and Japan and China, Egypt, all planned for this year.
Oh, I love that. When I think a lot of people just put those trips off until later. So, and then you're like, oh, I'll do them in a couple of years. Like, you might as well just jump in with both feet and just go for it.
I looked at it, as you get older, I see there's a lot of people either physically they can't do it or just mentally they're just don't give a rip anymore. I want to do it. Well, I still have a desire to do it, and I physically can do it.
Sure. No, I love that. That'll be a lot of bucket list items for you this year. That'll be exciting. What's your guilty pleasure hobby that has nothing to do with real estate?
I have a whole bunch of things that have nothing to do with real estate. I'm a big Iowa State fan, so I hit most of the football games, basketball games, try to hit the wrestling meets, both men and women's basketball games. I'm big with the Des Moines Performing Arts, the theater system. So, I hit all those shows, and then usually something, a couple, and I did that mainly because I had a theater friend, kid from high school is in the same fraternity as I am, and he says you got to open your mind. You engineers, you guys just.
You got to think bigger, Rick.
Yeah. He just said, you got to think differently is what he was trying to say. Okay. It's not all math and science. There's more to life than that. And so I kind of got more interested in the creative side and that sort of thing. And I'm taking more of an interest in that. So I have a lot of hobbies that are outside of real estate and work.
That's great. I think that people always say that's a recipe for a great retirement when you got a lot of hobbies because you can explore all those things. I always feel bad for people that don't have a lot of hobbies because it's like, well, now I went from working all this time to now what? So that sounds like it's great.
Well, I think some people think it's got to be like woodworking or, auto repairs. Well, I may be an engineer, but I have no mechanical ability to speak of. So that's not in the wheelhouse for me. So
sure.
The kind of things I mentioned, the kind of things I spend my time doing.
I love it. What is the one book besides yours that every leader should read?
I mentioned this book a couple of times because I read it when I was pretty young, but there's an author named Og Mandino who wrote a bunch of books, but he wrote a book called The Greatest Salesman. And I remember when I first read it, I was just enamored by it. I probably have read it 50 times.
Wow.
Short book. Okay. But I think it was great. Now, I've read a lot of, probably, a more recent one is Good to Great. I based the name of my 8 to Great off of that, but not the principles aren't really the same. But I found that was a very good book as a general business book for people to read.
I love that. Let's see here. You've lived a lot of life. What is the best decade in Des Moines growth in your opinion? Would it be like the 90s, the early 2000s or 2010? Like where do you feel like was the best decade for Des Moines growth overall?
Every latest decade's the best decade. It's just amazing what's been happening. I look at what's been happening in downtown growth. Remember when I started, downtown was going through a renaissance. So everybody thought that was great. Well, then it kind of petered out a little bit, and then downtown housing started. Okay. And then it morphed, and it's still going strong. Even through COVID, where a lot of employers moved away, a lot of people still wanted to live downtown. And I think things are just getting better and better in the metro area all the time. I'm not make America great again. No, let's just make it great. Okay. Because every decade's that much better.
Sure.
And, we've continued to grow. The metros continue to prosper. Every decade's better than the last one.
I love it. One, especially you mentioned the partnership. That was my first internship in college, was working with the partnership and seeing all these different communities really all with the same goal of trying to make Des Moines a really awesome place to live, work, play, bring more people here. I think those projects all bleed into each other eventually because everyone's going to benefit if there's more people here, more people staying here or visiting here. It just all kind of bleeds into itself. So I love that. Let's see here. What is your death row meal in Iowa? I heard that you're a sucker for Casey's Pizza like I am. So is that on your death row meal? What do you got?
Well, that's not on my, my kids all live where I have 3 kids, a son, and he has 3 kids, a daughter, and she has 3 kids.
Okay.
Another daughter who's a traveling nurse. So when she's around, so we get together once a month. And if it's your birthday, you get to pick. Okay, what you want. Casey's Pizza is a pretty popular choice.
Okay. Especially for your daughter as a nurse. Maybe she doesn't get it as often if she's traveling out of state.
But, this is I have a grandson turning 23, and he picked Sakari sushi. Okay, and then add on a Dairy Queen chocolate chip cookie dough blizzard birthday cake.
Okay, say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Okay. And I know nothing about sushi, but I called Sakari and they walked me through what to do. So it's pretty good.
That's awesome.
So, I'm probably, my favorite places to eat, are probably Steak and Side Sing. I love Fleming's. I like Prime and Providence, Oak Park, those kind of places I really enjoy. Table 128, go there oftentimes before the theater or Alba. Sure. Okay. So a lot of restaurants in mind. They got a lot of great restaurants. I was sorry to see Django go, and Americana go. I understand why, but I went there to those places a lot as well.
Sure. Yeah. There's so many. I think there's more restaurants per capita in Des Moines than any metro city in the Midwest or something. It's one restaurant per 20 people or something.
Yeah.
You guys probably have better data than I do on that. But
we don't really track restaurants.
There's a lot of good options in the area. So let's see here. If you were 22 today, would you go into real estate or would you choose a different industry?
Well, for me and my interest point, real estate was probably the thing that got me the most interesting. As for me, it combined my engineering and my business background. And, there are other things I could have easily just stayed being a general contractor and had my own general contracting company, which is what some of the kids I went to college with did. Or I could have, started my own development company. I didn't because, basically Hubbell gave me a platform to do whatever I wanted to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, I probably would start again in real estate.
Okay. That's great. Let's see here. Last question. Finish the sentence. The future of Des Moines is blank.
Future of Des Moines is whatever we want to make it. Okay, it's right there. I mean, it's just amazing how this community comes together. We haven't really talked about it, but several years ago, I got asked to lead a group to look at water trails. Okay, I'm the last guy you're going to ask about water trail. I didn't know what a water trail was. I'm not a boater, kayaker, canoeer, fisherman. Yeah. I did triathlons. I had to go in the water. I sucked at it. I was terrible at it. Okay. I just did it. Okay. So I'm not a water guy. And they said, well, that's great because we got everybody that is experts in all these other areas. We want the business community. And I saw just how excited people got about water. Okay, and what they could do with it. I think I went to 30 meetings of P&Zs and city councils and parks department meetings just talking about, hey, listen, this is what we're trying to do. We want you to help do it. And then I had to go to them all and say, I want you to give me money to do a study to kind of figure this thing out. And it morphed, and then it was Central Iowa Water Trails. And we got a bigger community. We got people like Dan Houston on board who's the chair of the committee, and we changed the name to Icon. And, we're doing $100 and some million that has been raised, 30 some million on the private sector. Okay. All because we know we can make it happen. Okay. We know we have to work harder than other states probably to attract people to Iowa. We don't have mountains and we don't have weather. We have weather, just not the kind that attracts people. Right. Okay. So, what we do have, we have a lot of rivers and streams. Okay. And we can turn them into an attraction that brings people into our community. Okay. Rather than just turn our back on them.
Sure. Well, I think even having some things like the skate park or other things that are just bringing people here on a regular basis, just trying to have things that just, again, that we don't have the natural beauty of some of the mountains or the ocean or whatever. So that's always great.
Well, yeah. And, my fellow Hamptonian, Kyle Kraus, okay, he's doing, pro Iowa State. We've been a big fan of that from the beginning. Okay. My grandson loves college and my son loves soccer. I don't know crap about soccer. I was one of those coaches that had to coach a sport I knew nothing about.
Sure.
Okay. But, times have changed. There is a lot of people that really enjoy that sport. If that'll attract more people here, then why not do it?
Sure. I think it makes a lot of sense. Again, the goal being the goal, it's everyone's trying to do the same thing, grow and attract the area. And it's like whatever, like you said, you might not be personally a fan of water sports, but if there's a lot of people interested and that'll bring people here, let's start building some water trails.
I've done it. I've jumped into kayaks. I've learned how to kayak, and I'm not still very good at it, I don't think, but good enough to go down a river for the most part.
Sure. I love it. Well, you've passed the gauntlet of lightning round questions. Congratulations. We talked about this kind of final month here as you're finishing out your tenure at Hubbell. Is there something that you're trying to do or make sure that you leave a strong impression with people before you take off? Is there like a final meetings with people or final parting wisdom you're giving to individuals about certain things?
My transition is taking on a very long period of time. So, one of the first questions I had to answer 22 years ago is what is my succession plan? Okay. And over the years, I've narrowed it down. Kyle Gamble's going to be the incoming. He is the CEO. I'm not the CEO right now. So I'm just kind of coasting through there for a couple more weeks. And, I've helped him put together the leadership team. Okay. It's up to him to determine what he wants to do with it. But we spend a fair amount of talking because, you find out when you're the CEO, all of a sudden, you don't have a lot of friends. Okay. You have a lot of people who work for you. Okay. Who kind of want to be your friend, but they have a little bit of ulterior motive, okay? And you're going to have to, find other people to talk to through that process, okay, to kind of guide you where you want to be. I'm an engineer, so I knew all about the technical side, how to do everything. He's the sales guy, okay? For him, I keep telling him, focus on the sales. Your team has the others. You rely on them on the rest of it. Don't try to jump in and tell them how to build buildings. Okay? You don't know how. They know you don't know how to build a building, right? But you do know how to sell. You know how to sell it. You know how to lease it. You know how to get it rented. All that sort of thing. So, you play to your strengths, and then work with your team and build them up.
I love that. Well, I think how long did that succession plan start? I mean, before you even probably had a talk with Kyle or some of the other existing team of like, hey, I'm actually planning to finally retire.
I
20 years later?
I'd probably put together a 5-year plan for Kyle. Okay, so for 5 years now, he's been going through the different transitions from senior vice president to executive vice president to, chief operating officer to chief operating officer president to president and CEO. Okay, and I had spelled that out to him in great detail how it was going to happen as we go through.
Sure.
So he knew he got to prepare himself. It's a much different, when I took over the company, we probably had 60 associates. Okay, when he took over the company, we had 500 total. I had 3 or 4 divisions. He's got 17. Easier for me. I helped create all 17 of those things. Okay, he didn't get that advantage, so he had to spend more time with them.
Sure.
Okay, and you had to give him the time, and I wanted to be there to support him through it.
Sure.
And so we've had a very good transition. I've been happy with it and pleased. Everything's going great.
I just don't think people realize if they're listening, like this isn't a give a 2-week notice situation. Like this takes almost a decade to get somebody prepared to even know you're going to step into this role in 5 years. Like we're going to groom you to get you to this point. Because it's just, again, you can't just throw a random new hire into a role that's going to run the whole company. It could tank everything.
Des Moines is, it's a small town. Hubbell's, even though we now have a very large presence in Omaha, Des Moines is still our home. And, I've seen other companies over the years try to bring in outside talent to run the company and just fail miserably. Okay, they aren't connected to the community. They don't have roots in the community. It's real, real tough. And it takes a long time to establish that. Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, I basically ran development. So that means I was at a ton of P&Z meetings, a ton of city council meetings, a ton of chamber meeting with people all the time. Your network gets very large. And when you're my age, none of them are still working. Okay. Okay. But the network got pretty large at one time. Okay. To bring somebody from the outside in to step in, that's real, real difficult.
Sure.
Not that it can't be done, but I have never seen it done successfully.
Well, and even just the legacy for you of like, you've spent so much time of your life building this thing. You want to leave it in good hands. You don't want to just like give it to somebody, like you said, that's going to tank it or take it a completely different direction than what everyone was planning to do. It's like you want to try to do that. So that's, I'm sure, a big thing for you personally too, just to make sure you're leaving it in good hands.
Yeah. And Kyle's been with the company, I think 32 years.
Wow.
Okay. Our executive vice president, Joe Petrosinski's been there over 20 years. Rachel Flint, senior VP, over 20 years. Casey Port in charge of Hubbell Construction Services over 20 years. A lot of the senior team has all been there 2 decades plus. Okay, so there's a lot of people there.
That's incredible. You're mentioning kind of like this entrepreneurship approach to running a business that maybe you didn't start or that you don't have ownership in, but talk to me about how you inspire entrepreneurialism for your team. You mentioned that being a cornerstone value for the company. How do you inspire that in your team internally? If someone's listening, if they have a team, they want them to kind of take that mindset as well.
Well, again, I talk about stories. I mean, you look at the different divisions. I'll talk about one. So, I can't remember exactly when, say early 90s, Hubbell Realty Company bought First Realty Better Homes and Gardens. Okay. I don't know if you remember that company or not. Mm-hmm. They had 250 agents. They were the second largest real estate company to Iowa Realty, who probably had 400 or 500 agents. Iowa Realty was a behemoth. I mean, they owned Midland Homes, the largest home builder. They were developing things like the project in Clive, Country Club, a huge project with lakes and all kinds of things around it. Okay, they were big, and number 2 was First Really Better Homes and Gardens. And Jim Hubbell said to me, he said, "I want you to become a land developer." Now, I'm a construction engineer. I build buildings, okay, not develop land. Never done it before. But, hey, sounds kind of interesting, right? So let's jump in, and start looking at how to develop land. And the first thing you got to do if you're developing land is you can develop the land, but you got to get relationships with builders. And, it's pretty loosey-goosey back then, Right. Iowa Realty, they were only concerned about selling houses. So if you wanted to build in Country Club, you they basically subordinated the lot to you, and you paid at the lot when you sold the house. Of course, you listed the house with them, and
Sure.
They sold the house, and everybody made money. Okay, and I had to compete against that, and it was difficult, but I ended up, a group of us internally, there's about 6 of us, started a company, and we went, and Jim Hubbell said, good luck. I want nothing to do with you guys doing this thing. So we financed, I think at one time I might have had 12 different builders building spec homes in our developments, okay, just so I could have a product so First Realty could sell houses, okay. Land development became a very profitable business. We ended up selling First Realty to Iowa Realty.
Okay.
It's now called Berkshire Realty.
Sure.
Okay. That used to be First Realty Better Homes. Okay. Better Homes was a Meredith thing. So
I was going to say Better Home and Gardens was kind of the...
They had the franchise. I mean, they created it.
Sure.
Okay. And so that got us into land development. This hot kind of second thing that I was doing with 5 other guys in the company, I was doing all the work. Okay. So it'd be like, you and I do it. Yeah, I'll sign on. I mean, we were guaranteeing loans. We weren't putting any money in because we didn't have any money. Yep. Okay. We were just young kids. Okay. And thought this would be fun, but I was doing all the work. Okay. So I went to Hubbell and said, we need to create Hubbell Homes. This needs to be part of the company. And because I'm still developing commercial buildings. At the same time, I'm developing lots, doing all this other stuff. I need more. I need more help with this. And so we started Hubbell Homes, hired 2 of the builders that were building homes for us, came to work for us, and we started home building. I think we did 75 homes, and we'll do, like today, we do about 300.
Sure. How does it feel like as you're stepping away from with the legacy side, like you probably can't drive anywhere without seeing a home that was built or developed or land that was owned or developed or the skyline, a lot of the stuff that's on the skyline you guys had a hand in. What does it feel like for you from the legacy side to see the impact you've made in this town?
I'll tell you the positive. I mean, you get very proud of what you're accomplished and what your team's accomplished. But I tell people, you've been around a long time. They tore down the East Block of the Kaleidoscope, which is what I came to town to build.
That was your first project?
That was my first project. And they're building a 33-story, high-rise apartment building on that same corner. So it's great to see something new going up, but, it's been, close to 50 years. So, just a little over 40. So things change, okay, better use for the property.
Sure. Well, I think it's probably hard. You probably get sentimental about some of these projects, especially if you had a really good hand in it. Have there been any that have had new mixed uses? You mentioned this Kaleidoscope project. Any land development or spec home or anything like that kind of came up that has a sentimental drive to you more so than just a business connection?
Well, there was a lot of things. I mean, you look at, we call it River Point today, south of downtown. Yep. I mean, we have Gray Station, which is a little bit farther to the west. But I mean, when I first came to town, there was a Southern Lumber Company down there. There was I think concrete plants, brick plants. The name of the area was called Factory Addition. Mm-hmm. And we changed it to River Point, tore down a bunch of them, started building new buildings down there. Okay. And it's just cool to see that. Now, a lot of them probably need to be torn down and replaced. But, the Hubbell building, when I came to Des Moines, that's where I worked, was in the Hubbell building. Okay. I started on the 5th floor, moved to the 2nd floor, then up to the 10th floor. Eventually everybody is moving out of the building. Another story, I guess. And so I had this idea of, this would be a perfect candidate to turn into housing. Okay. And I met with a guy named Keith Denner. He'd probably say the story was different than this, but I went to Keith Denner. He built Sun Prairie. That's the one right on the interstate, I-80, with the windmills outside. You probably have seen it. And a big complex. And I said, Keith, I don't really know much about multifamily. Okay, what do you think? What do you think about converting this building to housing? And he says, Rick, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Oh, no thinking bigger out of him. It was just dumbest idea. 3 months later, I get a call from Keith Denner. And he said, that idea you had, it's actually a brilliant idea. Okay. I don't know you all that well, but
You've been having some drinks today?
Yeah, no idea goes from the dumbest idea. He says, well, what the difference is Iowa Finance Authority says we have funding for somebody who wants to do a conversion of a downtown building into housing. And he said, if there's money out there, all of a sudden your dumb idea becomes a great idea. And he basically helped us develop and turn that whole office building where I'd spent, 20 some years of my life, and turn it into housing.
Sure.
And affordable housing at that.
That's crazy. Well, again, just the right context. As your network grows, you have those connections that you're putting those ideas out there, and eventually they'll connect the right people too. We talked about some of the bigger projects that you've had. Is there any like projects that were like during an economic downturn, or a project that you guys lost a bunch of money on that was a huge learning experience for you? Was there any of these that stick out to you that were like really big learning things in this career path for you?
Well, everything's a learning thing. Okay. So, I'm part of a National Association of Home Builders Builder 20 group, 20 builders around the country. We get together twice a year. I had a friend down in Florida, West Palm Beach, wanted me to come down there and kind of partner with him. And he wanted me, we'd do the lots, he'd build the houses, we'd split the profits. Okay. And we found a project in Vero Beach, Florida. I know nothing about the East Coast of Florida. He really helped pick it out. I checked it out, whatever. Okay. Well, my friend who, had been in business a long time and made lots of money, during the 2008 recession, he says, Chinese drywall came up and he says, I'm done. He just closed up shop and disappeared. Of course, I'm holding the line on about 50, 60 lots in Vero Beach, Florida. Okay. I had to start a home building company in Florida and slowly build out all of that during the recession thereafter. Okay. It was financially very painful. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you learned a lot of lessons about, maybe not the greatest thing to do. Okay. Yet, I went in, I thought I had the right partner, everything else, it just didn't work out. So that was maybe. But on a positive side, one of my friends in that same group went to found a company in another market where the ownership was transitioning, okay, probably closer to my age, but they were transitioning. And, it's tough to get out of a home building business if you're in one, because you're always borrowing more lots. You have more lots. You have a lot of debt. You're like, hey, how in the hell do we get out of this thing? Okay. But we found a couple of guys in Omaha. And so we bought a company called the Home Company in Omaha. And they were doing about 75 homes a year. And last year, I think they did about 170 homes. Okay. We've owned them now for, I think, 9 years. Okay. That's been a very positive experience. Taking the same idea I got from somebody else in that builder group. But that's the same thing with the Origin Homes and the Build on Your Lots. Wayne Homes is probably the largest Build on Your Lot builder in the country. Okay. Out of Cleveland, out of Canton, Ohio, excuse me. And, we kind of modeled ourselves after their organization. Now they're a lot bigger. They do more than we do in production. They probably do 400 or 500 homes a year in 5 or 6 states. Sure. It's kind of nuts. But you get the idea from these other organizations you're part of, and you bring them home and you see what you can do. Sure. And that's what I encourage my team to do. Get involved in these organizations, go to these meetings, and just see what other people are doing. Okay. And take the good ideas and try them here. Sure. Okay.
Well, again, if it drives that mission forward, again, any idea is a good idea if it's the right situation, the right timing, the right people to drive it forward. But if you aren't doing that group think, it's like you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, right? Because if something's working in Ohio, it could work here, and it doesn't do any skin off those guys' back to have you have success with the same thing here. So I think that's a big piece of it. As we kind of tie it all together, I'd love to hear kind of your vision for the future for the company. You mentioned you had to come up with your own vision when the original CEO was handing the torch to you. What was that conversation like with Kyle 5 years ago when you said, hey, you got to come up with your own vision now to run this thing?
He said, well, what's wrong with your vision?
Oh,
why do I have to be that much different than you? So he's personalized a little bit, but he's pretty much following the same 8 to great. And that's what he's doing. I would see us probably diversifying a little bit more. As we've grown, we're going to have to look at some of the other marketplaces around. We've had good success in Omaha. We need to take that on the road a little bit, and we're going to have to figure out where that is and what the product's probably going to be. So I can see him doing that. We had good luck buying one home builder. There's probably more home builders or developers that even general contractors that we might buy in the future to join our team.
Sure. Well, and again, you find the right economic downturn, the right circumstance, or ownership is turning over. You can buy it at a good price and really make a difference for you guys too.
But when things are going great, believe me, that is really not a good time to buy anything. Nobody wants, if they want to sell, they want a huge amount of money for it. And, that's not the right time. But, it all cycles. Okay. And, we're kind of in a so-so cycle right now. It's, things are good, but they're not great. But they're not bad either. So it's doing okay.
Sure. No, I love that. So now you've kind of gotten this new vision with Kyle and with the company. Any parting message to like the Hubbell team or the Des Moines community as you kind of sign off for your career here?
Well, I'll stay involved. I'm going to stay on the board. The board meets 4 times a year, and I'll stay involved in that for a few more years, to kind of watch over things. But really, is to take advantage of the opportunities. As you pointed out, there's going to be good times and bad times mean opportunities, and look for them. But there's always opportunities. Okay, look at what somebody did. Maybe somebody had a good idea, but they just implemented it poorly. You could take that same idea and implement it well, and it turns out completely different.
I love that. Final message for people. Where can they find your book? Where can people purchase that?
Amazon.com. I think you can purchase the whole world there. You can also get it in BarnesandNoble.com, and Target, I think, sells it, but Amazon's the main source.
Awesome. Well, I'll have to add it to my bookshelf upstairs. We got to have some good reading material for flights if we're traveling for work. So, Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think, again, it's super interesting time that we snagged you right before you retire. It's such a cool time to reflect on a career here in Des Moines and all the impact on the skyline you've had. So,
well, as you know, I could tell stories for hours. So we could have gone on telling a lot more stories about things that have happened in my career. So I've had a good career. I've enjoyed all of it.
Perfect.
I believe in number 8. Have fun.
There you go. No, that's a good piece to kind of keep the mood light. So, Rick, thanks so much for coming on the show. If you guys have made it this far in the show, you guys know what to do. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel this year, so make sure to do that. And if you haven't already, make sure to check us out on social media. We post every single day from the last 114 episodes. So clips going out every single day from those. But until next time, my name is Ryan Snod. It rhymes with odd, and I'm out. Peace. Thank you so much for watching yet another episode of the Rhymes with Odd podcast. We really do appreciate your support. If you could give us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes, that makes a world of difference, guys. Also, if you're tuning in on YouTube or Spotify, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and check us out on social media. Also, if you'd like to inquire more about our services here at Snod Media Group or learn about doing your own podcast for your own business, you can find us at snodmedia.com. See you in the next episode. Peace.